and let us all do we can to build a better future.
Let's talk about our good friend Bernie Sanders. How can we all forget the beginning of the political movement that Bernie Sanders started way back in early 2015 and gaining so much momentum throughout 2016? How can we forget how this person made us all feel and, dare I say it, awaken us to the fact that we are in a neoliberal nightmare? Now, Bernie Sanders is not a perfect human being. He allowed himself to be cucked not once but twice by the DNC. Never once did he speak up or stand up for his supporters, volunteers, or delegates that were wrongly assaulted, physically assaulted, verbally abused, and threatened during the DNC convention in Philadelphia way back in 2016. I remember that. I was there. I spoke to a lot of delegates, men and women, who reported on being assaulted, verbally assaulted, threatened, physically assaulted, men and women. Again, I got to be careful what I could say here, but there was a lot of harassment too, especially towards women, Bernie Sanders delegates who were hurt. People whose jobs and livelihoods were threatened, people who got fired just for being a delegate for Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders allowed his people to basically be stepped on by the Democratic Party. And what did he do in 2016? He supported Hill Dog. Now, here's where I have to take the L. I thought this time around in 2020 that he would be ready. I thought he'd be ready to fight. I was wrong, and I take back any kind word I ever said about Senator Bernie Sanders. Because, again, the same thing happened to his supporters and delegates and volunteers. And this time, his campaign was far weaker and smaller. And since then, Bernie Sanders has constantly been sheepdogging people into the Democratic Party, fighting for his good friend, Joe Biden. But now something has happened. Something has arisen. Something has been brought to the light. Bernie Sanders has been apparently, and again, this is right now still being investigated into, but discussing how Bernie Sanders giving $200,000 in campaign cash to the Sanders Institute. By the way, the organization appears to be doing very little on paper and pays six figures worth of compensation to Sanders' wife's son. So let's go ahead and pull up this video here. This will be difficult to watch. But on the other hand, too, I'm not going to stick my neck out for someone who's never going to fight. And since Bernie Sanders chooses not to fight for us, I think it's time for us to look into what Bernie Sanders is really doing. Maybe it's time for us to get a refund. Hey, let's have democracy in the chat. Type 1 for, no, kid, we got to trust Bernie. He'll help us. I still believe in Bernie Sanders. Feel the burn. Type 2, no, God damn it, I want a refund.
Well, America's favorite socialist, Bernie Sanders, made a name for himself by promising to redistribute the wealth. Turns out he has made good on that promise. He's taking the wealth from his campaign donors and he's redistributing it to his family. According to a report from Fox Digital, Bernie quietly funneled $200,000 from his campaign fund to the Sanders Institute. Well, what's the Sanders Institute? It's a good question. According to Bernie, it doesn't exist. Because in 2019, while Bernie was preparing for a second run to the White House, the Sanders Institute said it was ceasing operations to avoid the appearance of impropriety. But we looked at the books, and the Sanders Institute never shut down. They're still cutting checks. The Sanders Institute cut a check for $100,000 to their executive director, Dave Driscoll. Who's Dave Driscoll? It's Bernie's stepson. Who runs the Sanders Institute? Oh, well, that would be Bernie's wife, Jane.
You know, I had to find this, but I won't play the full interview. But way back in the day, on June 15th, 2017, Hard Lens Media actually had a chance to interview Jane Sanders. at the People's Summit. Just an interview I did. I had to bring this up. Yes, this was an old school interview. Oh, Jesus, kid, come on. What's wrong with you? Looking all happy. That's when I used to believe in hope. That's when I still had some passion of believing that there is a better future. Maybe, just maybe. But yes, I had a chance to interview Jane Sanders, who was and still is in charge of the Sanders Institute. It's a crazy world we live in, folks. Small world we live in. Small world we live in. Let's go ahead and play the rest of this video and enjoy it.
So if you donate to Bernie Sanders for president, hundreds of thousands of dollars go to Bernie's wife and kids. In the real world, that's a felony. But in Washington, that's business as usual. And this isn't the first time Bernie's wife was flagged for financial shenanigans. Bernie's wife, Jane Sanders, had to step down from Burlington College for falsifying records to get a shady $10 million loan. But she left with $200,000 in severance, and then that teeny college closed for good, citing crippling debt.
Oh, my goodness. What happened? Bernie. Jane, what are you doing?
We've invited Bernie Sanders to appear on Jesse Watters Primetime to explain his campaign finance scandal. Let's see if he's man enough to show up. But we'll also take his wife.
That didn't come out right there, buddy. Jesse, hold on. I'm rewinding that. Take it out of context. That sounds like something else.
Campaign finance scandal. Let's see if he's man enough to show up. But we'll also take his wife.
Is that a threat? But hold on, there's a little bit more into this because Fox News has been also ripping into this further. Shout out to Case Study QB. Let's play it.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders quietly funneled $200,000 from his campaign's coffers to his wife's nonprofit institute. Fox News Digital reports that organization appears to do very little on paper and pays six figures worth of compensation to her son. Federal Election Commission records show the Independent Senators Committee cut two $100,000 checks to the Sanders Institute for reported charitable contributions in January and March. The expenditures are the largest from the Sanders campaign to any entity this election cycle. Senator Sanders' campaign and the Sanders Institute did not respond to Fox News Digital's inquiries by press time.
So in other words, Bernie Sanders is not responding. I know Sabrina did a fantastic takedown of this video, but again, this is the article that broke it. Bernie Sanders wired $200K in campaign money to a family nonprofit. Senator Bernie Sanders' campaign committee wired $200,000 earlier this year to a nonprofit established by his wife and steps on the filing show. The Friends of Bernie Sanders made the payments to the Sanders Institute in two installments of $100,000 in January and in March, according to the disclosures of the Federal Election Commission. My goodness, the Federal Election Commission. Thank you so much for that. These outlays are the largest from the pro-Sanders committee this year. Fox News first reported on the contribution. The senator's wife, Jane Maria Sanders, and stepson, David Driscoll, co-established the think tank and unveiled it publicly in 2017 after Sanders' insurgent 2016 presidential campaign capitulated him into stardom among progressives. Right there he is thinking, oh boy, I want a refund. I can't believe I don't. By the way, I want to proudly say I did not donate to his campaign in 2020 because I wanted to see just how far he would fight. 2016, I did. Not in 2020, though. I'm glad I didn't do that. Not much is known about the think tank's output, though it appears to be paltry at best. The group's website primarily consists of links to articles on other outlets by fellows like former Labor Secretary Robert Reich. Oh, God, that guy. The website also includes vertical marking a conference of progressives in Burlington, Vermont, called A Gathering. That event took place in the fall of 2018. So in 2019, the group briefly halted its operations while the Vermont senator vied for the presidency in 2020, though they appear to have resumed since then. The Sanders Institute's stated mission is to revitalize democracy by actively engaging individuals, organizations, and the media in pursuit of progressive solutions to economic, environmental, and racial social justice issues. More than 1/3 of the nonprofit's income appears to have been spent on salaries. 1/3 of it? According to its 2021 tax forms, Jesus Christ, Driscoll, the executive director, was compensated $152,653 in salary and other benefits per those documents. Bernie's just like all the other politicians. He's like all of them. And to think, I used to respect this person. One of the Institute's biggest expenditure was the Timeline Project, which is described as a resource based on Bernie Sanders' work over 4 decades that will be one-of-a-kind pillars of the website. The group spent $159,885 on that endeavor in 2021, the tax filing said. Prior to the launch of the Sanders Institute, the Independent Center was harshly critical of then-rival Hillary Clinton over the Clinton Foundation. So he learned from the best, but he didn't know how to cover his tracks. If you ask me about the Clinton Foundation, I do have a problem when a sitting Secretary of State and a foundation run by her husband collects millions of dollars from foreign governments which are dictatorships, Bernie Sanders told CNN at the time. You don't have a lot of civil liberties or democratic rights in Saudi Arabia. You don't have a lot of respect there for opposition views for gay rights or women's rights. Do I have a problem with that? Yeah, I do. Oh, wow, Bernie, but you're creating something similar to it. It is not fully apparent who has donated to the Sanders Institute based on tax records. The Post contacted Sanders' representative in the Sanders Institute for comment. Bernie Sanders was last elected to Senate in 2018 and is up for re-election in 2024. Jesus Christ. Senate Democrats must defend 23 seats this cycle, including all 3 held by their aligned independents. Republicans only have to safeguard 11 Senate seats. Oh, Bernie, you cuck. So let's pull up this right here from the Federal Election Commission. Friends of Bernie Sanders, the Sanders Institute. Let's go ahead and make sure we can see a little bit more. Oops. Let me zoom out. There you go. $100,000. Look at that, Bernie. Say it ain't so, Bernie. Say it ain't so. Friends of Bernie Sanders. There's the amount. And you see it right here. Let this be a lesson to you. You cannot fix the Democratic Party. I'm disappointed, as should all of you be. So how should we end this segment? Then was, again, commentary from good friend of the show and contributor to INN, Jesse Jett.
If you fool me once, it's because I didn't think a guard was needed. If you fool me twice, it's because I didn't learn the lesson, so it bears repeating. If you try the same play 3 times running, it's because you know what's coming, and you didn't come to lead, you came to purposefully be misleading. Democracy is dry. It's been a century bleeding. The husk is gaping open to the sky, out in the field where all the sheep just keep on circling and worrying and bleeding. They're waiting for the shepherd that they've tried to hide their faith in, but he's so appealing. They'd gladly give their fleece. It's such a freeing feeling that even when he leads them to the ledge and starts to urge them on, they're positively beaming. They were told that they were on their way to save democracy, so even as they plummet, they just gloat. They don't consider screaming. And halfway up the cliff, the shepherd's cozy little mittens wrap around the staff of shattered human hopes on which he's leaning. He shows the gentle grin that used to stir your inner spark, and he says, "Not me, us," as he gestures to the oligarchs. He knows that if he runs, they're going to stop him like a stolen car. And he'll easily surrender because it bought a lot of time for laying mines in all the grassroots. Suddenly, the tiniest of movements gets you blown apart. Suddenly, you're in a play that's set on an election day and voting for the fire, unaware you're playing Joan of Arc. Suddenly, the shepherd pulls the rug and slips a hood across your clueless mug, and everything goes zero dark. I'm gonna warn you once more before it's 2024 and you fuck around and find out who your heroes are. To take a step back from the herd, and you'll learn that you can spot who all the shearers are. If you really want to know the product that they're selling, I can take you where the mirrors are. If you think your voice is finally ready, I can tell you where the lyrics are. I hid them in a box I had to bury neath the cobble when they carpet bombed the promenade and raided all the street bazaars. Now all we've got's the marketplace, and you're too broke to even bother asking what the options for your treatment are. Suddenly, the raw debris of homeless human dignity will find it has 100 teeth for every badge and sweeper's arm. Suddenly, they speak in solidarity and each is armed. Suddenly, the sheep can see the shepherd for his truest form and all pitch in at once to help him buy the farm. And now it's zero dark, and all is calm and peaceful save the distant wail of sirens that approach beside the flames of dawn. Suddenly, the carrot's just a string that's on a stick, and all your movements make you sick because the prize is gone. Now, we could go and flee into the forest low and meek, or we can exercise our right to feast and go and graze on Biden's lawn. Because he's been sowing seeds that seep a toxin out to sap a bit from each of us and keep on leaching decades after Biden's gone. So regardless who they summon out of hell to come and do the job, it will not feel like Biden's gone. But in that time of hopelessness, you cannot trust the shepherd when he once again comes asking you to humor him his siren song. And it's cute that you can innocently, honestly assume that's just a symptom of a system that was wired wrong, and not the standard feature, basic function, primary objective of a mass hypnosis firebomb. You don't need to know the words to cry along. Someday it'll hit you like an officer who pistol whipped their ride along. Broke his jaw and kept his job and kept it moving right along. That voting isn't red or blue or black or white or right or wrong. Voting's like a firing squad where you can choose the firearm. It's slow extinction by and large. It's Super Tuesday supercharged. It's all your futures, roots and all, just tossed out on a garbage barge. It's everybody dropping out to push the biggest oligarch. It's everybody voting fire, registered as Joan of Arc.
I was going to end this segment here, but first, there's one other thing I want to bring up. Gregory Walker, who tipped $2 on Rockfin, I'm going to give you this statement here. Safe to say we got burned. And I also want to pull up this video here of Sabrina Sabby Sabs. Her full commentary is going to be coming out later tonight, so please be sure to check it out because she did a fantastic breakdown of the cuck Bernie Sanders.
If you donated money to Bernie Sanders, you might just want to get comfortable for a bit. There was a story that broke yesterday, and I had to do a lot of digging because I did not want to cover the story if I did not have any type of financial receipts to back up what is said. I now have those receipts, and I don't think you guys are going to like what you're about to see. Bernie Sanders is accused of giving over $200,000 of campaign funds to his own nonprofit organization. Here you have Bernie Sanders, whose main message was follow the money. We got to stop corporate greed. We got to break up these billionaires' corporate interest. We got to follow the money. Apparently, Bernie meant that about everyone except for himself. Apparently, he didn't want us to follow his money, though.
That's, again, very interesting to bring up. The fact that Bernie Sanders would cover up his own financial dealings. Nobody's perfect. Don't hero worship these politicians. Bernie is no different than the rest of the politicians in Washington, D.C. I think the difference is he's not doing it in the millions or billions.
And here's the article here from the New York Post. Bernie Sanders wired $200K in campaign money to family nonprofit. Friends of Bernie Sanders. So you'll see the spender, the recipient, the date that it was dispersed, and the amount. We're starting with the higher amounts. Here's that $100,000. That was March 1st, 2023. Here's another $100,000. That was January 18th, 2023. So the spender is Friends of Bernie. And then you'll see the recipient here. So once we get to the third line, we're going to American Express, Trueverse, yada, yada. We want to focus on the first two lines here. Friends of Bernie Sanders, $100,000. The recipient was the Sanders Institute. Same thing for the second line, different dates.
It's all like it's just one big club. It's all like it's almost quite suspicious. Hashtag Bernie, I want a refund, goddammit. Where's it at? We have been officially burned. And I think it's a lesson that we finally learned. Hey, that rhymed. Break away from voting Democrat. It's the most healthy thing you can ever do for yourself.